Welcome to the Infrastructure Network, where we bridge the civil infrastructure education gap. Our on-demand video education courses, captivating podcast episodes, interactive virtual events, and tailored shows are all designed to spotlight innovative solutions and professionals dedicated to fixing America's deteriorating infrastructure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today's guest is James Golden, who's the CEO with PMG Pavement Management Group. Thanks for joining me, James.
Excited to be here, Chad. Looking forward to it.
I am too. You and I met months ago and connected on LinkedIn, and we started talking about roads. And you were doing a podcast. You have your own channels and things like that. And I was like, man, this guy's got it together. He understands what digital looks like in the future of sales and business and things like that. So I'm excited to talk to you about your business, and where you're going in the future. But first, what did you get into civil infrastructure? Like, why did you get into civil infrastructure?
Man, that's a great question. How much time do I have? Hey, I'll tell you, we're gonna have fun with your audience today. Hopefully this is, my whole goal is to deliver value, by the way. So I appreciate the opportunity. For me, I've been in this pavement management space for, I think it's 27 years. I had hair back then, which is crazy to think. My kids can vouch for it. But how I got started in this whole thing was, we've all heard this. It's not who you know. I'm sorry, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I learned that at a very young age. And, there's many levels and layers to that. But how I got started here was right out of high school. I had no clue what I wanted to do. No one's ever went to college in my family. That was not something of a path I thought I was going to be on. And then someone stopped by my house that summer, about a month after I graduated, who was 2 years ahead of me. He just happened to be in the neighborhood. Remember, this is back in 1996, 97. There's no cell phones, and you're not like, hey, buddy, I'm on my way, right? It's the old school door knocking, when your friend just showed up. Point is, he stopped by to say hi. He was kind of back in the area, and he had this portfolio of mechanical drawings. He was a draftsman.
Okay.
That's what he did. He came out of high school, went into a 2-year college, did drafting design. And I love that stuff, man. I looked at this and he brought it in and was showing me these drawings, and I was just floored by it. And my mom was with me, and she was like, you know what? Hey, let's go see if the local technical college here has that. And he was like, yeah, it does. You can do that here. So I got into a 2-year program starting to do that. An internship opened up at the Ohio Department of Transportation in their planning, design, engineering type department, looking for interns to do, guess what? AutoCAD. Just help the engineers do the grunt work on these types of drawings. We weren't engineering anything at 19 years old. They did all the hard work. We would go clean up the drawings. And then, about a year into that, they actually gave me some cool projects to work on. And then through that process, I was doing some umpiring and coaching at a high school, my senior year into high school, for the local, athletic leagues, right? The kids. And one of their coaches, the primary coaches I got to work with, have been doing this for years, right? Well, he happened to own like a construction type consulting company.
Wow.
So he knew I was doing this part, going to COTC. I had an internship at ODOT, and his business partner was starting this thing called Pavement Management. Consulting, needed help. So he recommended me, man. I got a phone call at 7:30 a.m. on the way to school, and it was him. And he said, hey, I need you to meet this guy over to Tim Hortons here. What are you doing later this afternoon? I mean, that's how we did things, right?
Yeah.
So the rest is history. I did that. I met this gentleman. He had an extensive background in construction, maintenance, repair. He was a PE, civil, maintenance engineer. And he actually had an entrepreneurial bug. So he had been in business for himself for quite some time. On the construction side, he got older, went right on into consulting, offering pavement management as a service. Honestly, fairly unheard of back in the late 1990s, looking at data, right? And how do we leverage that data to go make decisions? Data-driven decisions in 1999, hell, I was scanning Mylar drawings at ODOT and cleaning them up, just now digitizing them, let alone an electronic, process.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it, man. And, I'll skip a lot. I worked for him for about 13 years, I believe. Built up the company to a nice lightweight regional engineering type of firm, where we would do this as a service, predominantly Ohio. That's where I live.
Yeah.
And then I would do all that work in the beginning, give it to him. He would use a software application with his expertise in looking at deterioration curves, and he would provide our client with a plan.
Yeah.
Over time, I just kept asking questions. Can I go onto the job site? Can I go meet with the city engineer today? As a very, very young man, and he was cool. He was like, yeah, come with me. Let's go. And we had so many conversations on the 2-hour drives, on the overnight stays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He became obviously a mentor. None of us got to where we're at. I know you have an extensive business acumen and background too. I'm sure you would say the same.
Oh yeah.
You had a mentor at some point that was kind of a tipping point maybe to really get you to that next level. And this man was that for me. He was for 13 years. And then he had his own situations. I'm not going to get into that side of it because business can get ugly. We both know that.
Right.
The bottom line was I was an entrepreneur for all these years. I worked my way up to develop this. There was just the two of us in the beginning. It became an actual service, that we sold for pavement management. I became the director of operations, almost like a COO role there. I had a team of 10 people underneath me that went out and did all the activity scheduling, project management, anything you can think of.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to learn the in and outs of what that type of a business would take to run. Because, you can go Google right now, how to start a plumbing company, and you're going to get tons of information. You can go to ChatGPT, right? It's going to give you some cool stuff. If you go type in there, like, what does it take to start a pavement management condition assessment firm? Crickets, unless I'm on camera somewhere talking about how I did it.
Right.
How he did it, initially. Well, some circumstances came up, and I'll just say that it allowed me the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to bet on myself here as a 31-year-old non-PE, by the way, not a professional engineer.
Yeah. Just
professional service. I've been doing this a long time. I've got an acumen for it. I'm good at it, right? Let me go help some clients out. So I started myself out in 2011. Okay. And I've been on my own ever since in a couple of different capacities. PMG was kind of like that 2.0 version of my business because, if you're not innovating, you're dying. We know that.
Right.
So back in the day, walking around pavements, that's just not scalable.
Right.
And humans get hungry. We get hangry.
Well,
we get.
Right. So let's go back a little bit. A lot of good information there. It's been very helpful to the audience to understand your background. One of the things that you kind of mentioned is you started the business in 2011, and it's 13 years later. Go into some of that struggle of what it's like to be an entrepreneur over that last 13 years, because you're an innovator. And I have experience in civil infrastructure, and I understand like the struggle to get the acceptance of technology in this space. What has it been like for you for those 13 years?
That's a great question. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a thing where, the definition of it is the definition of it. One who bears the risk in starting something on their own. I mean, I'll just break it down as simple as that.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is it takes a specific individual to be able to deal with the roller coaster, the peaks, the valleys of what it's like to run your own company in any capacity. And I don't care if you're doing 100K a year in revenue as a solopreneur, which I've been there. You finally get into the true business ownership world. You know what I mean? Like, and I tell that to everybody too. There's, the term entrepreneur is like this sexy French word. That's it. Period. End of story. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everybody wants it to a degree until they understand when you get on podcasts like this and talk to real business owners, it's not for everyone.
Right.
You are bearing the weight and responsibility of 100% of everything in your initial few years until you can, kind of outsource. If you're fortunate, your C-suite team, but that's not how most of us start. You start with young individuals, you build things up. I trained every level of my business out over 13 years. I didn't do it day one because day one, it was me, relationship with client. They trusted James. I had to go fulfill it all. And then when I did hire somebody, client doesn't care about that, right? It's still James. It's still the James show. James did the work. James did it. And that's where you see a lot of, business owners that start into professional services like you and I have in the government space specifically. How do they get there? The same way I got there. You have a unique skill set. It's you found your niche within that side of it, right? And you're really probably one of the few that can do that type of thing to a high level of degree.
Right.
If you stay there and you don't focus on additionally delegating tasks, developing technologies, finding other ways to add value, you're going to get stuck. You will hit your ceiling.
Yeah.
And that's why, most don't even last 3 years, 5 years, let alone 10 or 13 years.
Right.
So, the struggles of all of it day one are you only know what you know,
Right.
So that's the underlying tone in all this. You only know what you know. And are you willing? The only failure, by the way, is if you quit.
Right.
If you didn't quit, you can't fail. Doesn't mean I didn't have losses in years and had some good gains in years and all that. But that's kind of my underlying message to like the peaks and valleys and risk and reward of it, and at some point you will hire people and they're going to have families. They have car payments. They have mortgages. They need groceries in this inflationary period, just like you and I do.
Right.
And that is where my focus is in the team, growing them to be the best leaders and skill sets that they can have. Yep. That way, if PMG's acquired someday, they've got a spot. PMG folds someday, they have skills and a resume. They can go into the workforce, right? And be profitable. So there you go.
And that's huge today, having a company like yourself, family owned, that provides value to these government entities and, doing it efficiently and, cost efficient too, by, reducing the cost, because you're at a place where you can come in and effectively inspect roads with your technology, from what I know, right? And you can provide more value, like you've mentioned, and you can do it at a better price point than a massive corporation can with all kinds of overhead, right? So it's looking at it that way. But what I really want to get into is the obstacles and the rejections, the objections, I should say, the objections to why someone wouldn't accept your service. Because I know in my space, it's always an objection. Well, that sewer is different than the next door's sewer system, and I'm sure it's similar to roads. So I'm curious on what you've ran into with some objections.
I love it, man. I love objections. The early days of pavement management, the easiest objection, the most common objection was not money. It was like, why do I need this? Right? You want me to spend 10, 20, 50, 100, $200,000 on getting data? That goes out of my paving budget, James. I need the money. I got to pave the roads. Wow. So mindset. So the way I look at this I'll use CEO as a loose term, man. Like I don't have all my C-suite hired out, just whatever, right? PMG. When I look back on just say the last decade, how I handled those objections were like, well, holy.
All right. So we were talking about objections.
Yeah, I mean, these objections early on in my career are different from the objections nowadays. So all the way back then, just to kind of touch point on that, because we had a pause issue on my end. The objection was, why would I go spend money on data and spreadsheets? I need those funds and money to put into my network and my road. So the mindset is what I was really kind of getting to back then was, this goes against my budget for my paving. I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. And what we had to do, from a sales perspective, is kind of not convince. You can't convince everybody, Right. So before I get into all the other stuff, like just the objection part was, look, we understand that, but it's just like your asset, any asset back then, hey, if I could tell you, how long do you plan on keeping that Ford F-150 you just bought and paid $50K for back then? Oh, I'm planning on keeping this for 15 years. Okay. If I gave you a crystal ball and showed you at every single point in the life cycle of your Ford F-150, where you can prepare to solve all of your maintenance repair problems, and I only charged you 1.5% of your annual budget, would you be interested? Oh, come on, man. Come on. That's pretty good on my part, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. And at that point, based on their feedback and their response to it, I know if I was going to continue qualifying them as a candidate or if I was going to move on as a business owner. Right. Because that's another part of all of this when you start out in business is you think you can ask the 30-year-old James, who's your ideal client? What are you talking about, man? All cities, all of them. They all have roads. They all need me. Not how it works, is it? Nope. So over time, you start building up who is your perfect avatar. Yeah. Why are they an ideal client? I really got very, very niche. That's why where my business is at today, I probably could have a little bit more of accelerated growth if I'm being honest with you. But I wanted to make sure we had all the systems dialed in and all the processes laid out. I'd rather be patient for a few more years and then I can start to see my hockey stick, if that makes sense. Yep. And because I'm 45, I don't want to be doing this for 20 more years. Right. I have a real legitimate build the business exit strategy in place as an entrepreneur, which most don't. You did. This talking with people on that side of the house. So that's important to me. But the objections nowadays, when you fast forward to this stuff, it's boiling down to education. Okay. So we're seeing pavement management has become normalized in America infrastructure for sure, relying on data analytics to solve those problems, to give the engineers what they need. And it becomes education. So our generation and younger, so, from my oldest at 26 to me mid 40s, they're now coming in, taking over those municipal roles, city management, public works, director of engineering, you get the idea. They want data-driven process. The other part of that is they're coming in and they're losing all of that legacy knowledge that the past generation had. They just ran on pure gut feel, where they knew where the complaints were, they knew the budget. And if none of that was captured in a systematic format, the new person coming in is blind. So from an objection perspective, nowadays, it's more along the lines of, I don't have it in my budget this year.
Yeah.
I have to plan, because unlike us as business owners, like, we can go sell more, you know, we can make a couple cuts here and there if we need to get what we need. Governments are on a budget. Once it's set, that's it for the year.
Right.
You know, so there you go. What we try to do as a business, by the way, on that is, I'm happy to be creative. It's almost like creative financing. Like, we want relationships. We don't want projects. So.
Yep. No, good points all around. So one thing I've noticed is that, and I'm just kind of relating with you because we are very similar, was that in sewers, for example, the defects are all robotically scanned, right? CCTV. The defects would sit there on a USB drive or a 3-ring binder, for example, in an office of public works directors. And then what I thought about was like, okay, well, all this data is sitting there about these sewer systems, and how are they grabbing this data? And I started to research and look into it, and the engineering firms that were grabbing the inspection data would put it into these binders and USB drives, and it would sit there and nothing would ever get done. My point with that is, we never had an easy way of like analyzing that data so that those directors could make better decisions, and everything was done manually and hourly rates. So what I did was just like, okay, well, if we're taking all this content data, putting it into a spreadsheet, for example, create pivot tables, put some repair recommendations to it, because you know which sections of pipe were the worst, and then you give a better deliverable to your client, right? Very simple. So I'm sure you ran into very similar concept there, and I'm curious on how it is with roads.
Yeah, it's actually a great parallel. It's right alongside of it, literally, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You know, back in the day, you would go out, you would hire, if it wasn't a James, you know, like professional services based condition assessment, road consulting didn't exist. It was an engineering thing only. Hence, I mean, the gentleman that started me up was a PE, right?
Right.
And PEs, they're trusted by their communities. And what I'm learning, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on that unless you want to later. I'm cool with it. What I'm learning is a lot of engineering firms honestly don't have all the knowledge that they think they may have possess. Right. But because they're a PE firm and they are smart individuals, great engineering firms, and what they do have the ability to do is to say, okay, I'll create a solution against it. Doesn't make it the right solution. You can charge billable hours. It's almost like being a law, right? Yeah. And I learned this over a lot of years and time. To your point is, cities we're paying engineering firms hourly rate tables, very expensive, just to think and come up with things.
Right.
That probably already exists somewhere in the market. If you just look nowadays, it's all there in our industry for roads. There's dozens of options for what you're really looking for. You know, do you really want just the condition assessment? That's an option.
Yeah.
Do you want just the maintenance and repair recommendations? That's an option. Do you just want software to stick data and play with it? That's an option. And then when you have like P&G, we're like the white glove turnkey. We're going to do it all and manage it for you at a great price. Yeah. Because I think that's kind of where stuff's kind of going. You know what I mean? But
you're right.
It's the same, if I'm being honest with you. You know, roads are no different, except with the exception of every single city. It's the most expensive budget item year in and year out is the maintenance and repair of that asset.
Exactly right. I mean, you're looking at 400, I think, billion is spent on roads a year, roughly, right around there, something like that.
I think the number is from the infrastructure side. I mean, it was right 4 to 500, right?
Yeah.
But the road side of it, I think, was around 60% of that because bridges were involved in the number.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. You know what I like to do, by the way, is like the American Society of Civil Engineers publishes this stuff. You know, like, we have $4.5 billion of backlog. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, cool. That's the American way now. And when I start off in presentations, I'm like, guys, everyone get out your calculator. Type 4.5 billion on your iPhone calculator. Can't do it.
Wow.
There's not enough real estate. Your iPhone says, sorry, I'm done. I'm not typing that big of a number.
You got to flip it horizontal now. That's what I do.
Horizontal, you know, it's all this. And it's like, okay, so how many of you truly wrap your head around what that means?
Yeah.
Because we live in an information age where it's just at us all day, every day.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways, especially in the infrastructure side, we've been desensitized on what this really means, you know, and what we're just trying to do at the end of the day is take that concept, break it down analytically in a data-driven format, map it, let you see it for for your small city, for your big city, for your county, whatever it is.
Right.
That way, let's get away from 4.5 billion. I mean, now you and I need to go talk about those messages, but they can't comprehend that. Let's look at the 22 million backlog for you, or the two. You get the idea.
Yeah. Prioritization, risk assessment is all huge. And then you mentioned to me something about there's still paper-based inspections, manual inspections that were going on today in 2024, 2023. I think we were talking about it, but still, what is it really happening? Is manual still happening?
Yeah, so we'll take it back to the first part of that last segment. You have these engineering firms that come in and they've been providing this type of data, 1 to 10, 0 to 100. Who cares about the methodology?
Right.
And it's not that it's bad, but you're paying a human being at a very high level to just go walk around to do really what they want to do, which is say, hey, I did the list compilation. Here's your 3-ring binder. Pages 1 through 7 are all the worst roads.
Wow.
Now that's what was happening. That is what is continuing to happen. Because with all due respect to most engineering firms, guess what? They're not real privy on the latest technologies of preventive maintenance, preservation activities. Why? Because that's a whole different contracting mechanism and element. So if I'm an engineering firm, which I'm not, what is my true incentive to go to the city of Chad and say, hey, man, I'll be honest with you. Instead of spending that $1 million on million overlay where I actually have a piece of that, I got to go do X, Y, and Z to help you get out. I'm not recommending that for you. I'm recommending you spend 50% of your budget on a crack seal program, a rejuvenation program, a microsurfacing program, a cape sealing program. All of these different fun, opportunities that exist for roads. Yeah. Just think of preventive maintenance and preservation for your vehicles. Again, it's the easiest one. Nobody buys a Ford F-150, a Honda, I don't care, a Lamborghini. Yeah. You don't go sink the money. Actually, I have a podcast called Are You Managing Roadways or Lamborghinis? So I'm going to roll with that one.
I like it.
In America, the average cost to repair 1 mile of roadway is $250,000. Period. End of story.
Quarter mile.
Yes, for those engineers going to come on here and yell at me, there are some pockets of areas you can do it for $125K, right? If 2-inch mill and overlay is your only strategy, okay? Full depth reclamation, that might be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a mile, okay? But my point is, on average, how are we repairing a failed road in America? Residential, by the way, for the most part. And again, key stat, residential roadways make up over 80% of all of America's roads.
Yep.
Not the primaries and arterials and collectors. So basically, that's what we're talking about.
Quarter of a mile at a quarter of $250,000,
You got it,
mile of that's expensive.
Very expensive. So let's put into some real context for you. Okay. If you are the city of Chad and you have 100 miles of road, I don't need to hire an engineer to come up with the network replacement. It's 100 miles times $250,000. I solved the problem with you with basic math. Yeah. But this is what we're doing. We're hiring this out. We're producing information to produce information to go sit, in a lot of cases, in the 3-ring binder on the USB drive, or worse, in some very expensive software application that no one is leveraging or using.
No one knows how to use it.
No one knows how to use it. So again, I'm not here. There's engineering firms, I'll name them, that are doing an amazing job in pavement management right now. Yeah. And I like competition, man. I love it. I have some great competitors in this space. It's all moving it forward. Yeah. Yep. Right. But just like anything else, there's those that are out there that are just doing their old way. It's what they know. It's how they need to generate revenue. I can't fault them for that either. Right. If I'm an engineering firm that's been doing this type of thing for the last decade, and I don't have AI at my disposal. I don't want to, my business isn't built for that, for example. If that's the case, then just keep doing what you're doing and add value to your client. Yeah. You know what I mean? But technology's here. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So road condition assessments will almost be commoditized.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow. This is great conversation, by the way, and great information. So a couple things that my brain's processing right now. So that there's 4.9 roughly million miles of roads in the United States, right? So you take your numbers, you start adding that up, that's massive. But then again, if our budget's like $400 billion annually spent, now you put in there's bridges in there, and 80% is obviously residential roads, stuff like that. And if they're not prioritizing, the right roads, and they're just throwing a dart at the dartboard, so to speak, and then fixing whatever they want. But that becomes very complicated, but also spending a lot of money where it doesn't need to be spent on that engineering assessment. Like, sounds like it's a huge dollar figure just getting dumped in there, where we should just be replacing and fixing these roads. And here's where I'm going with this: $26.5 billion in related vehicle repairs annually based on AAA. That is huge. You start thinking about that annually and the amount of money we're spending on roads, there's something wrong there. It just doesn't add up.
No, and I love this stuff, man. So, and what is the biggest, if you take a look at the maintenance and repair side from a consumer perspective, that 26.5 billion that you mentioned. Billion with a B?
Yeah, billion. 26.5 billion.
Yeah. Sometimes even Chad and I have to deal with this. Like, wait, we did just say billion, right? Man. So what is the biggest issue? It's probably potholes. We're hitting potholes. That's causing issues and errors and blah, 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 and I say this, and it's not necessarily, some love it, some are going to hate it, but potholes are a choice. That's something that I say all the time because they are.
Wow. What do you mean by that? Hold on. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay, sorry. I got excited.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no reason 90+% of the time, I don't have the stat, but I'm just going to tell you, like, there's only one way to get to a pothole. Very simple. You neglect the road surface. Things happen to it, whether it's heavy load, light load, it doesn't matter. Time, age, deterioration, right? The only way you get a pothole, for the most part, we'll talk about a freeze-thaw climate first, is right out the gate, a pavement, once it's laid in, it starts to oxidize. From on the truck, as that asphalt's coming into your job site, it's already starting to oxidize, okay? Mm-hmm. You put it down, you pave it, it looks amazing, it looks beautiful. Oh, it's so good, right? So from that point moving forward, it starts to deteriorate. It's aging. Once a crack opens up from a climate, all climates, longitudinal transverse cracks, that's surface level cracking. Mm-hmm. That starts to happen, let's just say within the first year one. Into year 2 and 3, if you neglect those cracks, they grow. And then over that time, what's happening? Rainwater, snow, ice, it's all getting in there, debris, trash. This is real life. It's starting to get into that top surface, and it starts to work its way in there. And then when you compound that with repeated traffic application, repeated driving in those areas, right? What happens? The pavement starts to break. Now you have from the bottom up, you have issues there. And then over time, if you take care of that asset, you will get a pothole. You get alligator cracking first. Alligator cracking, if you ever see a pothole, you will see this type of cracking around it more often than not.
Right.
And then the pieces break apart. So the common sense part of a pothole is like, how did it get there? Well, the pavement's gone. It broke up, and it is now, go look in the gutter. Go look it's over there somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can go get the pieces. It's like a puzzle. You can go put it back together if you want, right? So the bottom line is, there is really no excuse in a lot of ways. We know the information. We know the preservation preventive schedules to go implement. It's, again, mindset.
Yeah.
A mindset thing. You have to understand, man, like, I mean, I'm just saying this globally. Yeah. The public perception is, this is what a road looks like. It's asphalt. It should always look like this. When you start applying the other treatment applications, it does have a different look and feel. You know what I mean? So education becomes paramount. You can have the mindset of a PW director to say, hey, I want to make change. I'm going to allocate my budget here. But if you don't marry that with the public education at your council meetings to understand, hey, this year, we're going to target these roadways, right? Then the concept is, keeping it good. Right. And this is the type of thing that you can expect. You know what I mean? Because then the residents are like, hey, what are you doing out here? This doesn't look right. Something's wrong, right? Public perception. And then what might happen is too much public pressure and saying they didn't like the look. Okay, well, but you're going to extend the life 7 to 10 years. Did you tell them that? Well, we did.